Let's go.
Shantanu Naidu, Mr. Ratan Tata's millennial friend.
Shantanu, describe Mr. Ratan Tata in one word.
Kind.
One trait that you have displayed perhaps to have had this journey at the Tata Group.
Curiosity.
Talking about inspirational entrepreneurs, name some for us.
Bhavish Agarwal is definitely one of them.
One word for 70 hours working week comment.
Personal choice.
As a millennial, one word for social media.
That's a tough one.
Silence, that's what I'm getting. One word for AI.
Responsibility, I guess. The idealization culture is what is the issue. So we always want someone else to give us the answer that how many hours should I be working? And then someone who you look up to says, these many hours you should be working. And then you want to follow just that.
The person joining us next, his designation is that of a general manager at Tata, but his identity largely is that of a social entrepreneur. He is an author. He is also a singer. But the one thing you know him most for is being Mr. Tata's millennial friend. Shantanu, thank you so much for joining us and talking to us. Is that a fair introduction to what your life is?
Heavier than what I would like, but fair.
Okay.
Nice to be here. So.
Shantanu, I'm quite intrigued by the different projects that you've been picking up, working with the Tata Trust. It is about, older people, lonely people at one hand. It is about strays and dogs the other. At a time, you're what, 30, right?
Yeah, 31.
You're 31. You're almost my age, and this is the age of a lot of entrepreneurs and startup owners as well. At a time when you have an entire generation which is looking at valuation, startups, and doing path-breaking stuff at AI, what keeps bringing you back to this social entrepreneurship, or to do more for others than actually your bank balance?
I think entrepreneurship is the pursuit of picking a problem and solving it. Picking a really tough problem and solving it, and all the profitable startups, and kudos to them for having done what they have. They have picked a problem, they've solved it successfully and made it profitable, which is a very successful enterprise, which is something I really respect and appreciate. For me personally, picking that particular problem to solve has always been about a problem that resonates with me on an emotional level, on a value system level. That is the only incentive that allows me to try and solve it. So I might identify a profitable problem, but it just doesn't excite me as much to chase it as a problem that has visible positive impact on communities. So the valuations, entrepreneurship, and the breakneck ecosystem that we have should exist and should thrive. And it is an important and integral part of our Indian youth, our economy in the future. But as far as social entrepreneurship is concerned, it's just a personal thing that I just need to pick a problem where I can see communities getting impacted positively.
I see. I have an observation to make. You are 30, in your 30s.
Yeah.
You sound like you are 45. Your vision is that of a much older person. Where is all this coming from, Shantanu?
I really don't know. If you literally mean sound, I have a cold today. So, but I don't know. I couldn't answer that myself. I think I have been privileged enough to be put into situations where I'm exposed to people who are quite senior in the industry, which allows me to perhaps absorb as much as I can. So I think I have an advantage in that sense. So it's really not me as much as the situations I've been put in, and I'm quite lucky for that.
I feel like if the world were a binary or a spectrum right now, you would have Elon Musk on one end and Mr. Ratan Tata on the other. A lot of young people today, millennials, Gen Z, would sort of gravitate towards Elon Musk's way of life and way of work. What sort of brings in a person like you to understand more the values and sort of what Mr. Ratan Tata actually stands for?
I think it's more generational than just Mr. Tata. There's been 5 generations of my family. I'm the 5th generation who is working for the Tatas. All the generations before me had regular general roles like an engineer here or a maintenance engineer there, starting from my great grandfather. So to see all the values planted in an individual won't be the right way to look at it, especially when it comes to the Tata Group. I think it has been a legacy that's been handed down so much. And my family, having been exposed to that over generations, has sort of allowed us to appreciate and respect that more, or have that as a central value system for our family as well. So I think that overlapping legacy where we have always respected and revered the Tatas through not one or two but 5 generations puts it in a different perspective for us of who we would like to.
Because a lot of younger folks today would give an arm and a leg to be in the position you are in, to be at in midst of this vast pool of not just resources but also knowledge and wisdom. If you were to talk to me about a couple of traits that led you to this position, which ones would those be?
I think if it all started with the story of motorpoles, it was one was technical and one was emotional. The technical one, which I love to tell people, is that a lot of people say, you ended up where you ended up because you were in the right place at the right time. And I say, yes, absolutely. That's the absolute correct answer, which means that you just need to put yourself in as many situations as possible for you to strike the right one. So I was always out there doing certain things, and some of them were quite embarrassing to look back on, honestly. But you never know which one is going to be the one that sort of opens that door, which is why you need to plant yourself in as many situations as possible. And the second emotional one was when you are doing something with complete heart, there is a way where people who also believe in that same cause to gravitate towards you or overlap paths with you at some point, somewhere, somehow.
So what is your message then to those young millennials at the moment who perhaps today, live in a world where there is no job security, there is no profession that is so-called safe or future-proof? To them who are looking at careers, looking at jobs, what is your advice?
I think, as tough as that sounds, and I'm sure it's a bit of a struggle because I work with a lot of Gen Z, especially in the senior care startup that we have. The age spectrum is between 18 to 24. So I'm exposed to them constantly. I think one of the great things that I have taken advantage of in this particular tough situation is to really choose something that gives you fulfillment. And I have seen these young folks give up on financially better off possibilities just to choose something that gives them something that aligns with their personal principles and personal values. Something that I would not have had the courage to do when I was starting off as a young engineer, for example. I went into engineering because it was safe, like you described it. A lot of my colleagues did, a lot of millennials did choose professions based on what is financially safe and what's going to create a foundation where we are not out on the street. But this generation has the courage to choose something that aligns with their personal values, that gives them a sense of fulfillment. And at the end of the day, they want to see what was the impact that was created because of what I did at my job today. And if the answer to that is not clear or is murky or is a corporate wishy-washy answer, then they're just choosing to lean or not pursue that stream. And I think that's brilliant because that's how change makers get made.
Talking about corporate wishy-washy, let's touch upon another subject which is very corporate nature, which is work-life balance. And I wanted to understand your take on that. We're again, like I said, binaries all around us. We have Narayan Murthy, 72-hour work in a week, compared to one that was mentioned in your book as well, where you said that one of the times that you were really held up by Mr. Tata was for actually making calls late in the night.
Right.
So where does that fit in?
I think there cannot be a singular answer because company cultures, entrepreneurship cultures, individual cultures dictate the life of an employee. So for someone to say you should work for these many hours or you shouldn't, and then applying as a blanket rule across companies that have different cultures would not be right. So at the risk of sounding diplomatic, it really comes down to each company and its own culture. If you asked my personal preference, of course, there should be a balance. But if you asked if I myself have balance, no, I personally like to fill in my life with a lot of things. At the same time, I do not like to transfer that on to juniors or people younger to me or in the startup, because I want to give them the right idea of knowing that a job is what you do and it's not who you are. It's not your whole identity. It should not be your whole self-worth. It's a profession at the end of the day. Yes, it puts bread and butter on the table, and yes, it can be something you're passionate about, in which case all these barriers won't be visible to you, in which case just please go ahead at full speed. But to assume that everybody else will operate under that same passion is not something we should take for granted.
Freedom and choices for all. I think that's where we are getting.
Yes, and the idolization culture is what is the issue. So we always want someone else to give us the answer that how many hours should I be working? And then someone who you look up to says, these many hours you should be working. And then you want to follow just that. But it really doesn't have to be idolization to a T. We have so many amazing entrepreneurs and so many amazing leaders in the country who you should be inspired by, and you should take the relevant inspiration from them. But to sort of clone your entire personality after a particular person you idolize will then end up in feeling this internal conflict of, is this the right thing? Should I be working with many hours? I want to be passionate, but I don't feel comfortable stretching myself that much.
Yeah.
So
Talking about inspirational entrepreneurs, name some for us.
I think Bhavish Agarwal is definitely one of them. The way he has built Ola, and honestly, I think for me, it's the entire entrepreneurial ecosystem and how it's sort of thriving off of each other is what is the inspiration to me rather than an individual.
Your eyes are lighting up at the thought of Bhavesh and everything that he's doing. He's clearly not for work-life balance.
I know.
He's a workaholic and he wants everybody to go down that road.
Which emphasizes my point that there are certain things that you idolize about some people and take inspiration from, and certain things you don't agree on, which should be allowed.
How are disagreements happening when you are taking decisions along with Mr. Tata? How is that generational gap, and how do negotiations and disagreements happen there?
I don't think there are disagreements as such. I continue to work for him and he is a great boss. He's a great colleague to everyone. He's been a colleague to when I have seen him, and he has this way of allowing people to present their perspectives in full before everyone makes a conscious joint decision. Something that is so respectable and so statesman-like and so refined in terms of business that authority and hierarchy doesn't as much come through. Everyone who sees him is allowed to present their perspective in a respectable manner.
All right, enough of diplomatic answers over there. I'm expecting some fast-paced action now, Shantanu. Things that your generation
I am not good at this.
Describe Mr. Ratan Tata in one word.
Kind.
At 30, Shantanu is a social entrepreneur. He's used to be a social media influencer. He's a deputy manager. What do you plan to do when you are 86?
Have a big farm with sheep and dogs on it.
Okay. If you could go back in time and do one thing differently in your journey so far, which one would that be?
Probably spend more time with my first dog.
I see. Interesting. Okay, as a millennial, one word for social media.
That's a tough one.
Silence. That's what I'm getting. That's the
So many
word.
aspects that are evolving every day.
One word.
Responsibility.
Okay. Social media does more harm than good, true or false?
True.
How many hours do you spend on social media?
Too many.
On work-life balance then, one word for 70 hours working week comment.
Personal choice.
Okay. What's your take on dating and marriage then? Any pearls of wisdom there coming from the eternal bachelor himself?
Still learning.
2 attributes in an older generation that millennials miss today.
A set of principles.
2 attributes in dogs that humans don't have.
Oh, selflessness. Living in the moment.
Okay. One word for AI.
Responsibility again.
One trait that you have displayed perhaps to have had this journey at the Tata Group.
Curiosity.
And finally, the most difficult question of all, dogs or cats?
No, I can't answer that possibly.
All right, Andrew, thanks so much.
Thank you.